Okay, let me do a very quick update video on Joshua James. I posted today is Friday, uh, whatever the date is, and I'm going to post this live. Joshua James is a Christian man that the FBI raided his home, I guess in Alabama this week. And they raided him like a terrorist. And his dear wife and child, 3-year-old child, are kind of like struggling right now. And the reason the FBI raided that man with armored vehicles and everything else is because he was working security on the day of the protests in Washington. And now they turned down bail, and he's an Iraq war veteran, Joshua James. The title of this is Release Him Today. The title of this video is Release Joshua James Today. Now I'm going to give you all of the media, all of the liberal and conservative and everything else. I don't really care about that. I don't give a shit about that. But what I do give a shit about is this. Whether you understand anything in your life or not. My dear mom, when she died, I'll mention it, she was tortured by watching liberal media for 2-3 years. And my dear mom watched those shows, MSNBC, and when you talked to her on the phone, and I had to avoid political conversation, she was so raged the last 2.5-3 years. And I would tell her when she'd ask me, I said, Mom, I'm not a Trump supporter. I did not vote for Trump. And I would tell her I'm not the other supporter. But she was it was almost an insanity. It was almost, and my mom was a dear person. But all she saw, and she had things, didn't you know he's the worst? And her and others would discuss it nonstop because of politics, because of media. Now, what we had in this country over the last few years is the FBI, and I've been in contact with them this week. I sent a letter to the FBI the last 10 days. And what I saw in your raid of this Joshua James was disgusting. Was disgusting that you treated that man. He's a Christian man that committed no crime, and the federal government and the FBI are holding him without bail. And they admitted he committed no crime. Now all the John Brennans and Comeys and McCabe's, and go back for 3 or 4 years, we know they did this to political figures. And all of the liberal sites that will refuse to speak up, there are probably half the country that would be saying, and my mom would be one, and that's not her fault, that would be saying, good that Joshua James, an Iraq war veteran, is taken from his home, put in high security, denied bail, and not a crime was committed. And the reason is the political machinations. And so the John Brennans and the McCabe's and the Comeys, they had all of this on their side against top people, whether it's people connected to Trump, whoever it was, but you're doing it against citizens. And you did it like thieves and criminals. You know, scripture says the wicked hide and wait. And what the FBI did was they knocked on the door of Mr. Joshua James, pretending they wanted him for business. And lo and behold, armored vehicles, FBI, like a troop, made the wife sit in the car. And I'm incensed. I'm incensed. And Mr. Biden, whether you know what's going on or not, I really don't care. But the view that I've seen throughout my life of media and everything is people doing political prosecutions based upon let's get the other side. Now, if you want to do that shit with Trump and everybody else, but you let this guy out, you have no right to sit down and make these decisions. And the way they are made in our criminal justice system, whether it's Justice Department, FBI, or CIA sitting down, they are making calls which they have no authority to make. And they might have before them. There was a black Democrat woman. I love Democrats, I love Republicans, black and white. There's a black Democrat woman that this last few years on Twitter put out a fake tweet that said, if you want to vote for Trump, vote here. And it was fake. And it was wrong that that girl did that. And it was designed to kind of like sway people thinking they voted either by phone or by text for Trump, but they didn't. So it was wrong. What happened to that girl? Nothing. Okay, then there was a white man that did the same thing and said, if you want to vote for Hillary, do this here. He's being charged with a federal crime, facing maybe 25 years in prison. I think they might be holding him without bail, but I could be wrong. Now understand, you had a black woman, and I agree I would have let it slide. And she had something on Twitter that said, vote for Trump here, but it was fake. And it was designed to get people that were going to vote for Trump thinking they did it through that means. No charges, rightfully so. But then you had a white male, and he might be being held, but he's facing years in prison. Now, who makes those decisions at the level of the FBI and the CIA and Justice Department? Political hacks make those decisions. They sit down. I saw Mr. Brennan making comments about the dustbin. They view people that were on the other side of their political aisle as the enemy, and they want to go after them. And in this case, you are so unjust. You are so unjust. And Mr. Biden, you would allow that shit to happen. This country, things are going to hit the fan, but because of the actions you are making. And it's a disgrace that you went after that man like that. It's a disgrace that you pursued that man and his family. And the wife with a 3-year-old sat in the vehicle. And you know, as I looked at the pictures, it's the same vehicle that I just fixed. I had problems with the dashboard is the same one. I have pictures of me sitting, sleeping in that Mercury Sable in New York and all, my same model vehicle. So what I could say to you is this. I understand that this was done out of a political oppression. That man was doing security for a group that was called the Oath Keepers at our Capitol on what, January 6th. And the investigation showed not a single violent connection. But he's on that side that the other side of the aisle wants to go after them. And it's a disgrace what you have done. It's a disgrace that you put your hands on Joshua James. It's a disgrace. And I'm incensed. And there's many that will not speak a word about something like this. So look at the links I posted just now. I'll post this right now. But if I could show you why they did it, it's that same political aisle fighting that's taken now into the citizens. And Joshua James is an Iraq war veteran. Admittedly, the FBI said he has no connection to any single violent act or crime. But we're holding this man without bail because you went and began pursuing. And the man at the top of the country, he's got corruption in him to the hilt. And all of you political analysts that were always playing sides of the aisle, you are unable to do what is just, because you can speak out against injustice if it serves your purpose only. And when it's on the other side, you cover it up. You've been enablers. You supposedly care for the women that have been abused. But you covered up for Mr. Andrew Cuomo. Local, we'll talk what's happening now at this time. So you played the game. And I'm sure many of you are so glad that a Christian man who committed no crime and his wife and his 3-year-old were treated like terrorists. And I know that side of the aisle rejoices over this. See, I wouldn't have rejoiced if you'd charged that black woman that did that thing on Twitter. Nor do I rejoice that you charged that white man for it. But that's the problem. Those on the left side of the aisle, they care nothing about justice. Because what they do is only play their side. And that's the media. And what you did to Joshua James is a disgrace.